We're taught to just close off our personalities. I was putting in energy to become someone I didn't want to be. I knew that if it was going to be audio, it had to be really good. Otherwise, people are going to hate it. Creativity and critical thinking, they're the top business skills, but companies are doing very little to develop them. So much online learning encourages you to be just a passive consumer. But if you turn off the visuals, then those images happen in your brains. When you imagine those scenarios, your brain doesn't know that you're not experiencing them yourself. My advice is become curious. The most powerful characteristic any leader can have is curiosity.
Hello and welcome to the Success Differently podcast. My name is Michèle. I'm your host today, and we're being joined by Russell Cullingworth. Now, Russell is an esteemed guest. I'm very excited about this conversation. He is the co-founder and CEO of ProDio Audio Learning. It is the world's first formal audio learning company for professionals. The interesting thing is Russell also has a background in finance, business, and leadership, and an interest in emotional intelligence and an MBA in strategy. But Russell and his wife started ProDio to teach about 80,000 learners to date, and they deliver on immersive, scenario-based audio learning that consistently earns top-tier reviews. Now, the curious thing is, Russell is all about imagination, creativity, storytelling, and there's so much about his history that tells a different story at the very beginning. So I'm really looking forward to exploring how Russell got from where he began to then where he was to where he is today. So Russell, welcome to this podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks, Michèle. We go back a long way.
We do.
Right back to the MBA, which I did in 1999.
That's exactly it, way
like
back when. And it's
Yeah.
been fun to see your journey along the way, and even now today, just recently published his new book. This is Learn to Imagine, Russell's new book. Now, Russell, you start off I think it's very interesting. It's called Learn to Imagine. So you start right off with the word imagination. And then the very first word in your book is imagine, if I'm remembering correctly. I just want to find it here. Your very first word is imagine and imagination. And then you lead us in the very first chapter, starting with the quote, "Imagination is more important than knowledge," by Albert Einstein. However, you were in accounting. So take us back to the little boy and help us understand how that little boy ended up in accounting and what happened after that. Take us back.
Yeah, I think it's a case of I wish that I knew what I know now when I was younger. I think that's the way that's the song. Yeah, as a little boy, I was fortunate enough to have parents who allowed us I grew up in South Africa. That's where my accent's from. But I had parents I was the youngest of 5 children. So maybe it was because I was the fifth that were super relaxed. But
Pretend to be, yeah.
and I had an older brother who was who probably would have been diagnosed with ADHD, but he was very energetic and explorative. So he and I experimented with very many pets and crafts and almost burnt the house down with some. We were making little houses out of candles and wax, and we were trying to glue the matchsticks together with the wax. But we left the candle burning and almost burnt the house down. But so my parents allowed us a lot of room, and in my book I actually dedicated to them because they did nurture that ability to imagine and create. And so growing up in high school, I was the lead actor in all the school plays. I was in the school band. I was playing sports. I was in the men's choir or boys' choir, I guess. And then I would come home and I would sketch Mad Magazine comics. That was my creative expression. And then my dad suggested I go and be an accountant. My other older brother was my oldest brother, so he was the first. He was the oldest. He was a chartered accountant.
Okay.
And so between the two of them, they're like, this is a good career choice. But yeah, they both happen to be introverted thinkers, so well suited to that sort of career. But I didn't. I respected them and looked up to them and took their advice and started at Price Waterhouse and as a young articled clerk when I was 20. I've
Okay.
got a little story. I'll tell you about that.
Yeah.
So when I interviewed with the partner of Price Waterhouse, I sat across from him. I was this wide-eyed little 20-year-old who wanted to become a professional CA in South Africa. It's a CAs, chartered accountants. And he sat across from me very smugly and he said, "You know, Russell, we have this FIFO policy at Price Waterhouse." And I'm like, "Oh, I know what FIFO is. It's first in, first out inventory." And he's like, so he just looked at me and he said, "Fit in or off." Literally, sorry for the language, but that was
That's what he
direct
said.
quote. And it's actually
Oh,
became the theme of my career because I did not fit in as much as I
oh,
tried. So through my 20s, I pictured myself as being the stereotypical accountant with a three-piece suit and briefcase, and I really tried to fit in with that.
yeah.
The interesting thing that happened, if I look back, Michelle, is that during that time I lost a great deal of my creativity.
Yeah.
I was so focused on learning about consolidations and merger accounting and all this heavy duty number crunching.
Yeah.
Um, I think, and that happened. So through my 20s and 30s, as a misfit in this career, for the most part, like I said, I lost it. But fortunately, I had two daughters who helped me
You can see that, right?
through playing with them. But
Yeah.
certainly in the workplace, there was very little room for it, and
Interesting.
it was
So,
actively discouraged.
right. Well, especially
Yeah,
in that workplace, accounting is such a head heavy,
yeah,
analytical heavy
yeah.
career, as I understand it to be. Um, I'm curious. So, you were in accounting and struggling to fit in. What prompted the choice to pursue an MBA with a focus on strategy?
Oh, good question. So when I came to Canada, I explored getting my Canadian certification, but it would have taken me 4 years to. I was 29 at the time.
Okay, so all of this happened in South Africa still.
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
so when I
Oh,
came to Canada
interesting.
at 29, I won't give you the
Oh.
date because then it show how old I am. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Um, So when I came to Canada, I decided I didn't want to be an accountant anymore. I knew I didn't want to be an accountant, so
Oh,
I decided I'm not going to do 4 years to get an accounting designation. I'd rather do an MBA. And fortunately, I was accepted into Simon Fraser's executive MBA, which became a transformative experience for me.
mm,
And some of the toughest classes were with Jervis Bush, and his self-exploratory, self-analysis papers that he'd forced us to write. I did terribly. I think I got a C on some of
oh
my
my gosh.
papers and was so out of my comfort zone, but it began a
Interesting.
process of transformation in me
It
as I
was,
began to do that, which ultimately ended up in me leaving my career and my first wife, actually,
oh, yeah,
and just changing my life, feeling the need to change my life. But that took another 10 years.
yeah. That's a huge pivot point for you, the MBA,
Yeah, it was
coming to
very huge.
Canada.
Just understanding that who I wanted to be and who I didn't want to
Mm.
be. Yeah,
So I'm curious, you mentioned your prof, Jervis Bush,
yeah,
you said, and his papers on self-exploration and whatnot, and how uncomfortable that was for you. Can you
yeah.
tell us a little bit more about that? Like what was happening for you as you were having to explore that self?
Well, I think I had been trained for 10 years at that point to be in my head and not think, and I think in our 20s we don't really think too hard about who we are, and we're just
Mm,
thinking about what we need, our house and our car and our pets and our kids, and
hmm
that's what we focused on and getting that all right. Uh,
hmm
so I hadn't done a lot of self-analysis or questioning. I'd just been doing, and through Jervis's work, he asked us to look into these dark boxes within ourselves,
Yeah.
and so that's where it's. And then but his comments on my papers were that I wasn't going deep enough.
Oh,
That
interesting.
was mostly what was happening. I was still dabbling around the surface.
Yeah.
So that
And
really, yeah.
I'm curious because if you were looking back now to that time, what might be your perspective of Jervis's encouragement or comments?
Well, he was pretty out there in some of his exercises and things that we had to do as a group and as a class, and that we had to talk about. And I'm I'm very comfortable with risks, so I took some risks in the class that didn't
Mm.
all work out. There was one time I remember telling a bit of my story that was very personal, and I asked there was another guy that I was quite friendly with, and I said, I really like his company, and I'd like him to be my friend, and it all came out all wrong and looked terrible, but it was the beginning of that,
Aw.
like opening up your heart, right? Because in a lot of these
Mm.
careers, especially in the professional life, like we're taught to just close off our personalities, right? Like
Yeah.
become like bricks
Hmm.
bricks like rubbing up against each other instead of softening and expressing and
Hmm.
being curious and asking questions about each other and being vulnerable.
It's
So that was the beginning of that process for me.
interesting. So was it I want to go back to that time with during the MBA because it sounds like this was a hugely transformative part and in part reconnecting with you with
Hmm.
who you were prior to your accounting career, that
Yeah,
younger
yeah,
person.
yeah. It was also through my account because I was a misfit in accounting, and I mean, I think I spent many years being confused about what was going wrong because it wasn't about my work. It
Right.
really wasn't. I was in accounting for 25 years.
Oh, good
The issue
heavens.
was never my work, it was my personality. And so that was
Hmm.
very confusing for me. And um, so the MBA, and then I also had a difficult first marriage, which really was hard on my confidence.
Hmm.
And aside from helping me to begin to discover my true self in that time, was also to build my confidence. So, as I worked with my cohort in the MBA program, including Brian,
Hmm.
your husband, um, um, I grew in confidence, and my confidence in my decision making, especially.
Interesting.
And then, so that was, some people call the MBA marriages break apart. I don't know if you've heard that one.
I'd forgotten that I had heard that one at the
Yeah.
time. Yes, because that did happen to a few
Fortunately,
people
yours
who
survived.
I survived.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, so
Um,
that was an important part of it is rediscovering.
yeah. Well, you said a couple of things which I think were really, really important to pull on. You emphasized that it wasn't your work, it was your personality that wasn't the fit, really speaking to the nuance between our learned skill and our natural talents and who we are, our value system even. Those are sometimes things that we disregard in our career, often don't
Yeah.
consider them important. The other thing you mentioned was a difficult first marriage. So where I extrapolated to was the people around whom with whom you surround yourself, right? The people who are in your circle. If you feel like they're not supporting you or aligned with you, you can feel really like a misfit, which
Yeah.
can dramatically impact how you feel about
Yeah.
yourself.
So that happened at work and in my
Right?
marriage.
Yeah. Really
Um,
difficult time for you, I'm sure.
and companies, this is part of my work and part of my later work when I left the profession that we can talk about, but is companies don't do themselves any favors by not recognizing differences, valuable differences
Yeah.
in their people. Because I was a creative and accountant, which meant that I I was really drawn to the future-looking accounting work, the planning and budgeting, visioning, and I would also put all my graphs, my Excel spreadsheets were always like designed with colors and when at one point I was director of finance at Canuck Place Children's Hospice.
Oh,
I
nice.
would do the budget binder for the board of directors, and I would put pictures of the kids
Oh,
and the house and all these, and make it really
yeah.
aesthetically pleasing as well.
Yeah.
You might be a little different than the standard person, but you bring these things. And, for the most part in my career, those got shut down saying, we don't do that here. We don't socialize with, my preference is extroverted feeling, my Jungian preference with
Mm,
the accounting industry is introverted thinking, which is the opposite. And
mm,
yeah, a lot of the messages were, who are you? You're not behaving properly. We don't,
properly.
yeah,
Mm,
we don't organize a happy hour with the staff.
yeah.
Accountants don't do that. And that happened at Canuck Place too, with my CEO was being
Right.
discouraged from going to the camps with the kids and just having a
Mm,
good time with them. And so there were lots of things that really I was I was really standing out just for the things I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. And
yeah. Well, I hadn't heard the expression external, extroverted feeling and introverted thinking. Is that what you said?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. What I'm hearing is that extroverted feeling self of you
yeah.
wanting to bring forward much more heart, build connection, build engagement, and you were using that creativity to create that connection
Hmm.
between
Hmm.
people.
Yeah,
That's what I'm hearing. Does that feel accurate for you?
absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So there's a lot to unpack around that because um I'm just wondering if we're ready to skip ahead to 2010, maybe.
We can, if you like.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm
So
also,
yeah.
pieces that are sort of drawing me as well is you
Well, let's
mentioned
go. Let's
acting.
explore those first, and I'll tell you a little bit later in my career what happened.
Yeah, because thank you. Because I'm curious about your past in terms of you said you were always in the school play and very active in that way. And you also in your book share a story of being exposed, I think you're 12 years old as a young person, young man, young boy,
Yeah,
to the War of the Worlds audio
yeah.
LP.
I actually have that here. Actually, I don't know. It's
Oh,
blurry, so
yeah.
there
Oh,
we
there.
go.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
Anyway,
Oh, no, it's
this
white.
is the one I visited. My wife and I went to War. This is the musical version of War of the Worlds. It's not the movie with Tom
Yeah.
Cruise. Um, so this came out in the 70s actually. And the reason I have the CD is because my wife and I went to a live performance of it in
Oh,
Manchester in the UK, and picked up the CD. But when I was about 12, I got my hands on a double LP, and um, I'm actually gonna, if you've got a minute, I'm just
of
gonna
course.
not blur my background and show
Yeah.
you.
There
So,
you
so
go.
the double LP you can imagine is like much bigger
Yeah.
than this.
Yeah.
And it also came with a book. This is the book, and it's got all these kind of pictures of the
Oh,
alien tripod and yeah, and the song lyrics. So anyway, this is the red.
oh, amazing. Yeah.
So the LP, you can imagine a 12-year-old, so looking at these pictures and then listening to this audio story um, of of the aliens' invasion of the Earth. It's based on Orson Welles, I think, was it
Hmm.
Orson Welles who actually freaked out the nation because he created a radio broadcast in the 70s of the story of War of the Worlds, but they portrayed it as though it was happening as a news story, and people believed it was real and created quite a lot of panic. They thought it was a real invasion of aliens.
Hmm. Hmm.
So anyway, Jeff Wayne produced this musical version with Justin Hayward. Justin Hayward was from the Moody Blues,
Okay. Uh-huh.
and so anyway, there's quite a few. It's narrated by Richard Burton. Excellent, such a excellent audio experience. So as a 12-year-old, my imagination just
Yeah.
exploded because it ties into what I'm doing now. But
Hmm.
so that experience I've has stuck with me more than any movie or anything I've ever watched since then.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we can hear that and see it
because
actually.
yeah, just because of the storytelling. I think, part of what I'm exploring now is the images as a trigger for imagination.
Hmm.
So that'll come back to what I'm doing now with that story of how deeply that impacted me. And I listened to it over and over again. When I got married to my second wife, Christine, we sat in a dark room with the fireplace going in winter and listened to this, and it was just phenomenal.
It would have
I
taken you
encourage
back.
anybody who wants to have this, who's interested in imagination, to really just go, and music, because the music is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And just go and listen to the story told with a musical background, backing sound effects, and excellent actors as well.
Mm. I think this is very interesting because, so as a 12-year-old, you were exposed to that first LP, which stimulated that next thing. And then you also have had the experience, you've probably watched the movie, I imagine, have you? With
Yeah,
Tom? Okay. And so you've seen the visual, the
yeah,
movie version of it, and you've seen the live show as
yeah,
well on
yeah,
stage.
yeah,
So such diverse experiences. And for someone who was acting in school, seeing that whole thing come to life, I can see pieces of how the depth of this initial experience as a 12-year-old boy
yeah,
has in so many ways, through expanding into different formats to experience the same story,
yeah.
would have such a dramatic impact on especially what you're doing today.
Yeah, and musical storytelling,
Yeah.
you look at Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran, who
Mm.
are excellent storytellers in music. So music's a huge part of my story too. I've played guitar since I was 13 and sang, and I sang in a pub to raise money for my first engagement ring and stuff
Oh my
like that. So
gosh. Yeah,
music
huge.
and singing my wife and I are part of a rock choir here in Port Moody now. So music
Beautiful.
is a really
Yeah.
essential part of that, and it's also part of
Ah.
imagination and
Well, I've
create.
always known you to be an imaginative and creative, I was going to say person. Always
Yeah.
known that since we met many years ago when you were doing your
Yeah.
MBA. So pole vaulting forward from the MBA, you were going through some transformation during that time with your prof, Gervais Bush.
Hmm.
And then in 2010, that's when you first founded the initial iteration of what you're doing now, right? And it was more just audio learning. Is that right?
Yeah, no, 2010 was actually it was
Is that right?
2009 that was pivotal for me because we did a while I was director of finance at Canuck Place Children's Hospice, we did an insights discovery profile and a
Mm.
and an executive training
Ah.
session. And insights discovery based on Jungian psychology, very complex. It's like Myers-Briggs, but much more complex
Mm-hmm.
and deeper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It also reflects another key life-changing moment is this was our two personas. So
Mm.
Carl Jung's psychology actually says that we have two personas. We have an external persona, which is the mask. The word persona means mask. So it's the mask we
Mm-hmm.
wear of who we think we are, need to be
Yeah.
to interact with the world.
Yeah.
And so every morning we get up, we put on this mask, sometimes physically, sometimes psychologically,
Mm-hmm.
mostly psychologically, but sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
involves makeup and hair and all that other stuff. Um, and then the other persona is who we are instinctively, and as we are just when we're not controlling how we
Right.
behave and who we are. And
Mm.
so, and in the middle of these two graphs is how much energy it takes you to wear that mask every day.
Right.
And so for me, I knew by now, at this time I was about 40 years old, and I knew by now that I was not an accountant type, and I didn't want to be an
Mm.
accountant anymore. And I knew, um, but this graph showed me I was putting in like 50% energy, which is high,
Right.
very high, to become someone I didn't want to be, which was actually to shut down my personality
Mm-hmm.
and appear more serious
Yeah.
and analytical and detail oriented
Right.
um, and I didn't want to be that person.
Right.
It wasn't something I liked doing. So
Yeah.
it was hard for me. And that effort is actually a physical effort. It actually takes a
Mm-hmm.
toll on you to do that. So
Absolutely.
I was
Totally.
like,
I mean,
why am I putting all this effort in to be someone I don't want to be?
exactly. Well, you're speaking to a ton of the work that I do in terms of it's that expulsion of energy to be someone that's insincere, disingenuous to
Yeah,
who you
all
are
those.
naturally,
Yeah,
which is not only from my perspective, and I see this constantly, but that mask not only involves a lot of energy misplaced, but it also deters from your ability to be as valuable as possible. You
Exactly.
know, to bring your valuable differences to the
Yeah.
world in a big way, because you're spending so much energy diminishing or toning down or muting or in order to fit in.
Yeah. It's like trying to be a tennis player with your wrong hand, you know? It's like, I'm
Yeah.
going to be a tennis player, but I'll play every match with my left hand.
Right. And
And
you've totally really drawn on something so important here, Russell, because you talked about the discomfort that you went through having to explore that part of you, right?
mm,
In your
mm,
class at the
yeah,
MBA with this prof, that it's a really uncomfortable thing to look and see things, areas maybe we don't want to explore. So what was it that where did you get the courage? Because there's a certain courage here to say, okay, this is who I've been for, you said 25 years in accounting,
yeah.
right? This is who I've been for 25 years of my life. Where did you get the courage to make such a dramatic shift?
Yeah, well, to be honest, sometimes these things are thrust on us, and I didn't, I actually, what happened was from Canuck Place, I was offered a CEO position with a children's charity, which I
Okay.
won't mention. And I thought this is an exceptional opportunity. I can take my
Yeah.
next step. It's a small organization, only had 14 staff. It would be relatively easy. I could do this,
Yeah.
Canuck Place had 60 staff at that time. And so I was like, this is going to be no problem. I can manage this. And it's a good CEO role. I love kids.
Hmm. Was
And they
that
had a
all up
camp.
here? Were you logicalizing
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, yeah. And also, I mean, there was this emotional excitement. I was
Okay.
going to work with kids. I could play and ride horses. They had a campsite
Okay.
where they put on camps. And I was like, I can just go, and I don't have my boss telling me I can't spend time, getting to know the children and families and caring about them and
There's that
showing
engagement and
care and
connection again.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. I could do that and I wouldn't have been
Yeah.
told I can't. And so I was very excited. And then so I left Canuck Place for this job and turned out a total disaster. Lasted
Um,
5 weeks. I took an emotional, everything was wrong. I ended up having no authority because the charity was run by a family that
mm,
made all the decisions and were very off base in their leadership.
mm.
Uh, and
That would have
uh,
been tough.
and there was no trust, so it wasn't operated on a no trust basis, and none of the staff were trusted. They were all
Oh, wow.
suspiciously treated suspiciously as though they were trying to steal or do something,
Oh, good
steal time
heavens.
or money, and so I don't operate well in
Yeah.
environments where there's no trust.
Most people don't.
Yeah, yeah. People who can't
Yeah.
be trusted operate fine.
Yeah, that's
So you
true.
end up
Well
keeping the
said.
people, you end up keeping people that the longest employees who had
Oh.
been there the longest were the least trustworthy employees. They actually
Interesting.
physically hid away from the
Oh,
boss when he came on the
oh,
premises. They would actually physically hide because
interesting.
they didn't want to talk to him. But
Wow.
anyway, that lasted 5 weeks, and I had no choice but to resign. I could not put my name on that organization because there were
Yeah, that would have been really
ethical
hard.
issues
So you
and
were facing some major, your values were really coming up hard
yeah,
to you at that point
yeah,
in your journey, hey?
yeah, and that was just all wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing about me and my CEO at uh, I've been told that that I'm too conscientious, and I am very conscientious. I have a very strong sense of right and wrong, and
Mm,
especially when it's affecting public and
yeah,
fundraising and so ethically, I have no room
right.
for
Yeah.
compromising my ethical standards.
So
So that,
then what happened? You
yeah,
realized you were in a position where you were going to be forced to compromise, which you chose not to. You resigned.
yeah.
And then what happened?
So I was without a job, and I was so impressed with the insights discovery work that I contacted them, and I had this brilliant idea to start an insights discovery company that would focus on young adults 18 to 30 and would help them with their journey, which I found was most confusing for me, would help them
Oh, lovely.
to avoid that confusion, to create self-awareness and deep understanding of themselves, of their society. And so that whole, those four competencies of emotional intelligence. And that developed into, yeah, this is really about emotional intelligence, self-awareness, self-management, which is, these are all very, very deep and complex. They sound so simple, right? Self-management, oh yeah, self-control. But there's so many elements of self-management, um, and then the other ones are social awareness and social management. And so I dug deep into that. So I started the company. It was called Center of Excellence for Young Adults, and to use Jungian psychology model to teach them about themselves. And I was accredited with Insights Discovery. I became a licensed practitioner. But I couldn't find clients. My goal was to have companies send their younger employees to us for training,
Right.
and to develop this emotional intelligence, but it didn't really work. Companies couldn't understand how to separate their younger and older teams. And so I evolved into EQ Advantage, which was for all ages. Then it wasn't just for young adults. And so so I did that for 8 years, with speaking and training for young adults, so for all ages. And yeah, and I mean, through that 8 years, I also immersed myself getting as deep as I can into understanding emotional intelligence. And there's some pretty deep stuff there. I ended up like Jervis Bush myself.
It's funny. The
Yeah,
things that we most resist are the things that we are destined to learn, whether we want to or not, right?
yeah, it's true.
It's so true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very true. Yeah,
It's beautiful. So you went through that journey, and it sounds to me like that was really the 8 years when you were invested in that EQ um, uh, landscape, if you will,
yeah,
was sort of the transformative period that took you to
absolutely.
really what you're doing today. It
Yeah, that
sounds
was
like
like my awakening.
almost like your
That
whole
period.
your whole ecosystem came together, that
Yeah,
past experience of the War of the Worlds through the different methods that you experienced it, and then going into your accounting, the logical mind, and the MBA, which is the more strategic side, and then the self-awareness and building more and more of that EQ, if you will, yourself as you're doing
yeah,
it for others. So here we find ourselves now with ProDio, right? Which
yeah.
involves more to it. It's more than just audio learning now,
Yeah,
right?
that's been a very interesting journey in itself. The way I got into ProDio, which is professional development audio. That's where the word came, as a compilation of professional development audio. It's also Latin for advance or move forward. So it's a perfect name for
The
what we
perfect
do.
name. Nicely done.
Yeah. So, um, so I always pictured a general on his horse going
Mm,
ProDio and like advance to his
yeah.
troops. Um, but what happened was, so I was in EQ Advantage. I was trying to market my emotional intelligence training to companies. So I did a UBC marketing course, which is a MOOC. I don't know if you know what massively open online course is, what it's called.
Okay.
That's a term. So a lot of universities around the world created MOOCs,
Yeah.
which they
Yes.
gave away for free.
Okay. Yeah.
So this was a free. It was summer in 2016, I think. Yeah, and I got very frustrated with this course. I was thinking about creating an emotional intelligence online course. Online learning was just emerging
Right.
at that
At that
point.
time. Yeah.
And I wanted to create an online course in emotional intelligence. So I took this marketing course and I hated it. I was stuck inside. I had my laptop there, and most of the time I was like watching someone talk at me
Yeah.
on the screen, which is, if you know me and my personality, I do get bored very quickly.
So
And
interesting. Yes, exactly. And that's the creative self, right? But the thing that's coming
yeah,
up for me right now is it wasn't the content or the work per se, it was the personality of it.
yeah.
Right?
And I mean, I
This
don't.
course was missing that.
Yeah, there was very little engagement. It was
Aw,
summer outside. I couldn't go sit in the sun
yeah,
because I couldn't see my screen. And then every time I would navigate away while I was listening, then they would go back to a slide and I'd go find the tab on my Google Chrome and go back
right,
to the tab to see what they're showing visually. And one point in the evening, I said to my wife, I wish I could just listen to this because there's most of the stuff I don't even have to look at. It's marketing. I'm sure I
right.
could just listen to it, you know? And uh, and then I was like, why don't I just create an audio course instead of and then
Mm,
we're like, well, let's create a bunch of audio courses. And we were fortunately, during my 8 years with EQ Advantage, I was doing training with CPABC, the Chartered
hmm
Professional Accountants
hmm
Association. I was training accountants in emotional intelligence. And try that for a challenge.
There you go. Bringing
A
back
lot
that
of them. A lot of
again.
them were very receptive,
Oh, for sure.
and then there were some who just completely rejected it, like
hmm
I did when I was in my MBA.
Well, you were looking for
Sure.
the extroverted feeling types.
Yeah, yeah, and
You were
they
serving them.
were,
There's lots of them in
they were,
accounting that
yeah, they
find their
are.
way there and,
Yeah,
feel
and a
like
lot
there's
of
a
them would.
FIFO issue.
Yeah, a lot of them would come up to me afterwards and say, "I'm just like you, and
Yeah.
I just want to find something different."
Yeah. Right.
Um, so
Uh,
um, anyway, yeah, so we managed to convince the vice president of learning at CPABC to do a pilot project with 4 audio courses.
mm,
So we went and built a mobile app and created these 4 courses. Now there's an important point I want to make here is that I was aware that audio doesn't work for everything. It
mhm.
doesn't work. You can't really teach Excel in audio.
Right.
It's not going to
Right.
work. But the other point was that I knew that if it was going to be audio, it had to be really good and not
Yeah.
just a lecture. So I
Yeah.
was like, we've got to make this really good, otherwise people are going to hate it.
hmm
And so we started building in storytelling and voice actors, and we got scenarios. That's created some scenarios. We created pop quizzes. We got clips from YouTube media channels. We threw in some expert interviews, but not long form, not
hmm
like podcast long form. Just we interviewed them for an hour or so, and then just cut and used the relevant pieces to the
hmm
learning outcomes.
hmm
So you have these expert voices. Our change management course, our instructor, you might know her, Hilary Curry. Do you know
Not
her?
yet. Nope.
The change management expert. She involved 13 people from all over the world, like in Europe and Dubai and Poland, I think we had. So she had 13 experts voices in her course,
Nice.
which was phenomenal because these were the world leaders
Yeah.
in their areas. So that was incredible. So yeah, so it became what we call story style
Right.
um,
Where
audio
did,
learning. Yeah.
yeah, is this what was it about the story that really captured you? Why was the story so important from your perspective?
Well, first of all, we love listening to stories. They're easy to listen to and an easy way to learn, and it's proven now very well accepted, even in
hmm
adult professional learning, that storytelling is a powerful way.
hmm
Corporate storytelling's big right
Yeah.
now, CEO stories, all that has become. I mean, the reason we're doing the podcast here is a story, right? It's my
Right.
story. So that was what part of it, and then, but part of me always in my career, Michelle, has wanted to have fun in my career,
Mm,
and
yeah.
story
Who
writing.
doesn't want that though?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Everybody wants to have fun in their career.
And so few people do. We just push it away, and we all
Yeah.
do it to each other as well. We all cancel each other's fun because we're
hmm
like, yeah, that's just silly. You shouldn't be doing that in the
Yeah,
work.
you put the mask on
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
Put the
yeah,
professional mask on because,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, exactly.
So I remember saying to Christine right from the beginning, like, I want to push the boundaries of what we can do with sound and audio.
Mm,
Like, let's create some phenomenal like experiences that without being ridiculous, right? Because
hmm
I've listened to some audio that can just get
hmm
overwhelming.
hmm
and annoying. So we didn't want to be annoying or silly or overwhelming. So we had to
Yeah.
get that delicate balance. But um, yeah, so we that's part of it that attracts me. It's just the working with it, and the voice actors is really fun because they bring it to life. They go to town and they are excellent. They know what they're doing. So
Yeah.
they create once we write this like script, it's good, and I can show people this is what the script's going to look like for your. We're doing one now with realtors with 50 pages of rules, the rules of cooperation. But this is what your 50-page rule book's going to look like in scenarios where,
Nice. Yeah.
and so they can see it. But then when you add the voice actors' talent, who act out these roles of realtors breaking the rules, for example, then it
Yeah.
just becomes a lot. It's a whole different ball game. We did one
Yeah.
just one more thing is we did one scenario of an open house with for the realtors. It was a safety course and safety around open houses. And we did one that became so powerful and scary that we actually had to put a disclaimer on the scenario that it might trigger people because the voice actors elevated it so much that it became very
Very
real
real.
and almost threatening in a way if you.
Yeah.
And so we've had to put a
Interesting.
be prepared.
Well, these are the stories we remember, right?
Absolutely.
As you've alluded to in your book and otherwise, stories are how we've learned for as long as humans have been able to
Yeah.
communicate in one
Yeah.
form or another.
Yeah. It is an
Yeah.
ancient way to.
Hmm.
It's the ancient way, and I think it's also the most powerful personally because and the neuroscience now that's emerging is is backing it up. I've just got one that was published in January this year called Narrative Creativity, published by Cambridge University.
Mm. Beautiful.
And it's the closest academic article I've found to what we're talking about, which
Yeah.
is the power of narrative
Yeah.
for,
Well,
for imagination and creativity.
okay, I was going to go there because learn to imagine
Yeah,
and
yeah,
imagine in being, I've got these pages marked because the very first word, as I said, if we look at introduction, imagination.
yeah.
It's the very first word.
That
So
is,
talk to us a little bit. We haven't talked about imagination a whole lot yet. I heard it come out again as a young boy. It was giving you that War of the Worlds experience. My imagination is telling me that that experience gave you access to your own imagination, which has stuck with you over all these years.
mm.
What is it about imagination, Russell, that's so important to you?
Well, to me, if you see the office I'm sitting in, I'm not going to show you because it's messy. But I've got paintings, I've got creative creative activities I've done. And these all started when I left the profession. I started painting, I started making crafts and
Mm,
woodworking. I built a kayak from scratch, wooden kayak. I'm constantly designing and building things. And so all that is, if you think of it, Michèle, is like everything in the world around you today started with imagination.
yeah,
Everything that has been made by man started in their mind, started in our minds.
yeah.
And so to me, that ability, and there's neuroscience behind this about your pathways, what happens when,
Hmm.
people say to me, "Oh, I can't listen to audio because I get distracted and I can't listen." And it is a bit of a brain training exercise to
Mm,
begin to listen to audiobooks and train your brain to imagine while
hmm.
you're listening. It
Hmm.
happens naturally, but if you
Hmm.
have to also practice doing it, just like going to the gym,
Hmm.
because the neuroscience shows it actually makes your brain stronger. It uses all
Mm,
areas of your brain and it widens your pathways for your synapses, which
yeah.
is where creativity comes from. So when you're trying to picture a new idea,
Hmm.
or even what a spreadsheet looks like, if you want to take it into accounting and engineering, I mean, engineering's they constantly imagining
Yeah.
what their what their end product is going to look like.
Yeah.
Accountants, it's what their budget binder or their spreadsheet's going to look like, and their graph of
Hmm.
what they think, how they want it to look. As you strengthen your brain's capacity for imagination, you also strengthen the ability to come up with those creative ideas.
There's the key, right? It's the ability to come up with the creative ideas. And I think one of the things that I'm really seeing in your story is the you had the foundation for creativity and imagination as a youngster. And as you moved into that next iteration of your journey, the more logical side or analytical side, it gave you access to a different sense of not only empathy, but also thinking,
Mm.
access to different thinking,
Yeah.
on that logical side, which I'm sure, as you come out the other side, I like to talk about the extremes, right? One end versus the other. There's the extreme imagination, and then there's the extreme logic, if you
Yeah.
will, creative and
Absolutely.
logic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to your point, you were talking before about where my imagination is going right now. You were talking about these two ends of the spectrum around energy earlier, the spectrums of energy, how you're using your energy. And as you bring those two forces together within, right? I always find that that's where the magic is. That's where the creativity really blossoms to its greatest potential,
Yeah.
is pulling together these different spectrum, the ends of the spectrum, and finding where the energy is optimized
Yeah.
in where it's a collaborative energy. Am I making sense? I'm just kind of having fun visualizing this, but that's why
Yeah.
Ashley's is playing with me.
I think the important thing is that we're not everybody is born equally, as far as I'm concerned, when
Yeah,
it comes to imagination and
yeah,
creativity.
yeah,
Some of us are very highly encouraged as children to explore our imagination and creativities. Others are encouraged to shut it down and get real and get serious about
yeah,
getting grades, math grades, and all these things. Um, but it can be developed. It is a
yes,
skill that can be
agreed.
developed.
Yeah,
Whether you had it as a child, I was fortunate enough to be encouraged. If you weren't, and you weren't a very imaginative child, you can still develop it as an adult.
yeah, yeah, I
But it
agree.
takes work, and it takes, creativity and critical thinking are the like number one, the
Hmm.
top business skills in many studies. But companies are doing very little to develop them.
Hmm. Agreed. It's interesting. I have expressions that I talk to your point as well around, I call technical mastery, or sorry, technical expertise rather, technical expertise versus creative mastery.
Yeah,
And expertise is limited until we bring our creativity forward, because that's where mastery really happens.
yeah.
Because we're bringing more ideas and innovation to the craft, if you will, that is limited within the boundaries of that learning.
Fascinating, yeah. You'd
Right.
love what I'm working on because my
Yeah.
most recent work is this intersection. I've got a Venn diagram I've developed, and I'm going to keep working on it, which is imagination, creativity, innovation, and critical
Hmm.
thinking. So
Hmm.
critical thinking for the analysts and the accountants and engineers who are the problem solvers and critical analysts. That is a really important role. And
Hmm.
you think of even
Absolutely.
with AI, you think about like working with AI. You need creativity to ask AI the right questions.
Yeah. Well, the
And then
interesting
you need
thing,
critical thinking. Yeah.
yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say you need creativity to ask the right questions. And then
Hmm.
you need critical thinking to assess those questions and determine whether they nonsense or have merit, and how to
Right.
modify them, right? So that's just a quick example of those two.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I
Sorry,
think,
go ahead.
even speak to, well, I think we're talking to the same thing through a slightly different lens, perhaps.
Yeah,
But I'm thinking when we're seeing someone, let's say an accountant, because we've been sort of choosing to focus much of this conversation on
I know.
that. Um, um, and when working with accountants, what happens is um, the art of the craft, if you will, is limited when they see the craft itself as the ultimate outcome. What I'm seeing and what I try to encourage around differentiation and around really bringing mastery to the craft is, given what does the experience of your craft feel like? What does that experience engage in others? How
Yeah,
do you bring forward your creative self to create an optimal experience of the craft itself? Because you
yeah,
can't change the rules of accounting, but you can change perhaps how you deliver the experience for those who need those rules,
absolutely.
right?
And
And so,
sorry, just like
yeah,
developing the creativity in yourself,
yeah,
aside from learning the content, like just the process of developing creativity within yourself should be a professional development
yeah.
goal. Is like, let me work on, it's like going to the gym. It's like taking your brain.
Well,
It is,
yeah,
it's exercise for your brain. It's like, let me develop these skills so I have the capacity to present these financials or budgets or
yeah.
analysis in a
In
different way,
yeah, in a
Yeah,
different way to
yeah,
speak to a different audience because
yeah,
not everybody wants to receive it the same way. And this is the thing, I was talking about courage earlier. What gave you the courage? And as you said, sometimes it's thrust upon us and sometimes we have to find it ourselves.
yeah.
That idea of taking off the mask and, as you've done beautifully, is acknowledging what in the learning environment, and that was a profound moment for you in the marketing course that you took. In that learning environment, you were thinking, there has got to be a better way to experience this. It's
Yeah,
miserable, right?
yeah.
And so bringing all of your knowledge and history into that and thinking, what can I create? And what keeps coming back is that initial experience of your War of the Worlds.
Mm, that's
Because,
right. Yeah. Let's
right,
create that at work. Imagine I could do that at work, have that
exactly.
experience. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. How beautiful is that? No matter what the craft, whether it's accounting or art or what have you, we all have, it doesn't matter what the craft is. What matters is that when we are taking off our mask and finding the courage to express our creativity through our craft,
Hmm.
that's when magic happens.
Yeah.
And I just love how your journey exemplifies that. In your case, you actually changed careers, if you will, but that's not always necessary,
It's
as
not.
we can see through others. You tried that through Canuck Place and bringing your creativity to your reporting
Yeah.
mechanisms. And in some places, that's not necessarily, well, in some places that can be experienced as scary because it's challenging the way things have been done or are done, or
Hmm.
the professional mask can be, in some environments, the professional mask is a very important and sacred part of the
Absolutely.
industry or the culture that you're working in. And
For the individual, or just
mhm,
for the person.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
we are a fairly conservative um, society. I'm not sure if there's other cultures that are more open to you trying things and making a bit of a fool of yourself because it didn't work the first time.
Oh, you know
But
what? Yeah, I've got lots of clients where that's happened, where we've been able to um, find a path forward where their creative self can be fully expressed, and that can happen in small iterative ways. And
Mhm.
as it's accepted more and more, it can bring more and more courage forward. But that creative self is such an important part to finding meaning, to finding a sense of
Mhm.
being valued for our differences and the things that we bring. Our craft is what earns us our way in the world, if you will. Our craft is our way of bringing value, but our way of experiencing meaning and fulfillment is through our creativity.
Yeah.
That's where the mastery comes in.
Yeah. And I mean, just one last thing that's important. In my book, I interviewed Lee Jerome, who's a clinical psychologist out of New York,
Hmm.
specializing in creativity. And she has a gallery called Relational Space, which explores this
Mm.
interaction between the analytical and the creative.
Hmm.
And she talked about computer coders, which you would think is the least creative,
Yeah,
but it's the least creative profession, but computer coders are imagining the end product in their mind
yeah.
while they're coding. And if you're looking at the code, I mean, I don't even know how web designers look at a block box of code and know that it's going to turn out into a beautiful website,
It's amazing. Like
And so,
yeah,
and that's an
I love
imaginative, you
uh,
building that in your brain.
that's their code is their paintbrush, right?
Yeah,
In a
yeah,
sense,
yeah,
they get to create through coding and see what comes from it. So it's modern art.
yeah. And the
In some
neuroscience, as
form.
I said, is fascinating. It's very complex.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't understand the articles and I have to help get AI to help me just understand what the article was actually saying.
Yeah.
But the neuroscience of it, and the one that I really love is that they scanned people's brains while they were imagining, and doing creative exercises, and and they found that those processes in the brain happen in areas that are not connected with your eyes. And so to
Yeah.
me, that was really important
Mm.
for learning because so much online learning is with your eyes,
Yeah.
uh, which which en- which encourages you to be just a passive consumer. You sit there
Interesting.
watching someone else's imagination. But if you turn off the visuals, then those images happen in
Yeah.
your brain. So we call
Yeah.
it making learners into co-creators
Right.
because they're creating their own people,
Yeah.
their own scenario, their own situation, and seeing what the office looks like or boardroom or whatever.
Yeah. You speak
And
to
it's
that, I
perfect
think.
for them.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
yeah,
It's perfect for them. Exactly. It
yeah,
matches the, you speak to that in your book. At some point, you remind your readers that the movie is never as good as the book,
yeah. I
right?
mean, I had that experience with War of the Worlds. The movies never matched up
Yeah.
to the book because I could do so much more in my brain.
Yeah. To
And
match it to the story you wanted that
yeah, yeah,
resonates with you and still
yeah,
extract the story, the essence of the story still holds,
yeah,
but you get to fill in all the details that make it so much richer and personally fulfilling.
yeah.
Which is,
So
we speaking about working, it's the same thing in our work. The work story or the skill or the craft still stays the same, but if we can bring our creativity into it and
exactly,
fill in those details that make it personally rewarding and personally meaningful, it becomes a
absolutely.
much more interesting endeavor.
Yeah, no, I mean, we also do onboarding. So if you think of starting a new job, and on your first day, you're given this big book of employee manual or book of culture,
Yeah,
how much better would it be to listen to a scenario of somebody starting their job and having to discover all these through conversations with colleagues or
exactly.
co-workers, so much easier to understand. And
Mm.
again, the neuroscience of
Hmm.
and the neuroscientist in my book, she also talks about when you imagine those scenarios, your brain doesn't know that you're not experiencing them yourself.
Yeah,
That's why so many people believe that a lot of things are real that are fictional because your brain actually can't distinguish between fictional and real
yeah.
and so it creates this emotional connection with the characters, and you feel what they feel.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of power in that, just engaging and remembering, and then also this process of expanding your brain's capacity to me is like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, this ex giving access and creating capacity for imagination. I'm just hearing, I mean, you're lighting up like a firecracker here. I can see it.
I
It's
know.
just so lovely to see.
Yeah,
And also, the key themes that we've talked about, just we really started out initially with human connection and engagement. Having again experienced that as a young boy in that story of War of the Worlds, you felt very engaged and drawn in. And so that came out early on. And then as we talked about wearing the mask and where energy is spent, that's such an important part of how much energy are we spending on
that's right. Yeah.
holding ourselves back or being someone we're not or the FIFO method,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah. Trying to fit
Yeah,
in, just
there's
trying
so
to
much of
fit in.
that. So much of that. And then as we discover, the more you release your creativity, you tap into all the craft and all the skill and all the trained learning, if you will. You can still tap into all of that and elevate its value through
Yeah.
your creativity. And that's just a beautiful thing. Russell, thank you
Like
so much.
you're welcome. Like I said, it should be a professional development
It
exercise.
should be.
Well,
So
uh,
for those,
yeah.
actually, I have a question. So if you were to go back on your story and look at, the journey you've taken, would you offer, if someone were setting out to, in their late teens, say, setting out on a professional journey, is there any wisdom that you might offer them in pursuit of their career path?
Absolutely. Where do I start? How much time do you have? Um,
What's the
uh,
one wisdom nugget that you would
the
want
one,
to
the
share?
one is, and Steve Jobs said never settle, right? Um,
Mm,
and I think you might not be on the right path right now, even. I mean, often it's our parents have ideas of who we should become,
hmm.
and often they're not, and they don't know us even.
Beautiful. Yeah, never
And
settle.
so if you're not on if you find yourself not fitting in, um, unfortunately, our world is so, and our careers are so focused on the analytical skills for success and making money.
Yeah.
Creatives really struggle,
Mm,
but so my message is, learn about emotional intelligence
mm,
because that is the real key. My advice is become curious. I think curiosity. This is from all my emotional intelligence work, speaking to
mm,
leaders like Marshall Goldsmith and Mark Goulston and these
mhm.
world-class authors and coaches and leaders, is the most powerful characteristic any leader can have is curiosity. Because
Gorgeous.
it drives if it's authentic, it drives all the right questions. It drives you to be more interested in others than trying to be
Hmm.
interesting in
Hmm.
yourself. And so just that curiosity of asking questions about yourself too. Be
Hmm.
curious.
Hmm.
Never stop asking about yourself and who am I? And, what do I have to offer the world? Um,
Nice.
and
I
so, yeah,
love that.
that's my advice is
Be
and,
curious, never
and
settle and be
and
curious.
ask the right
There
questions.
you go. And for those of you who are curious about Russell, I brought his book in a few times, but here we go. Learn to
Thanks,
Imagine. I
Michelle.
believe it's available on
Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah, just
Um,
if you search Learn to Imagine, there are no other books with that title, so
Perfect. You'll be
you'll
able to
find
find
it.
it. And
Yeah.
Russell, for those who want to connect with you in a more meaningful way, a human connection, where
Yeah.
might they be able to find you?
So LinkedIn is the best place professionally to connect with me because that's where I publish my articles and neuroscience and information about this. And I'm learning not to post ads about myself and to
Mm.
post content that I can engage my audience. That's taken me a long time
Engage us
to
with
learn.
stories.
Yeah, and the stories,
Aw,
yeah, I've got some good stories
gorgeous.
coming up, just about various ways imagination is used in many professional
Yeah,
areas, if
beautiful.
effectively. So,
All righty.
yeah, so LinkedIn is the best. Russell Cullingworth, you'll find me.
All right, that's super. Russell, thank you so much for sharing
Thank
your
you.
journey and allowing us to see your path forward and learn from you. It's been an absolute delight. I
Thanks for
appreciate
your
you.
curiosity, Michelle.
It's been fun.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Russell. Take
Thanks.
care. We'll talk again.